Known for being one of the greatest, if not the greatest, military leaders in history and emperors of France, Napoleon Bonaparte managed to conquer much of Europe during his lifetime. Napoleon Bonaparte was born on August 15, 1769, on a small island named Corsica, into a gentry family. Although his family was not the wealthiest of families, Napoleon grew up in a nice environment. He was educated at military school, but not being from a noble family and usually being the smallest of his class, Napoleon was often not accepted by his peers, but he was determined to show great dedication and work ethic, and that he did, and resultantly quickly was promoted at a very young age. In 1796, Napoleon was named commander of the French army in Italy. He used war tactics never seen before on the battlefield, reinventing a whole new style of battle. He forced Austria and its allies to make peace, and in 1798, Napoleon conquered Ottoman-ruled Egypt in an attempt to strike at British trade routes with India. Napoleon had started to gain a feeling of invincibility, destroying any opposing army that crossed his path. But he was stranded when his fleet was destroyed by the British at the Battle of the Nile. France now faced a new coalition. Austria and Russia had allied with Britain. Napoleon returned to Paris, where the government was in crisis. In November 1799, Napoleon became First Consul. In 1802, he was made Consul for life, and 2 years later, named Emperor. It was said that when being deemed Emperor, Napoleon crowned himself rather than allowing the Pope to do so. He oversaw the centralization of government, the creation of the Bank of France, the reinstatement of Roman Catholicism as the state religion, and law reform with the Code Napoleon. In 1800, he defeated the Austrians at Marengo. He then negotiated a general European peace which established French power on the continent. In 1803, Britain resumed war with France, later joined by Russia and Austria. Britain inflicted a naval defeat on the French. In 1805, so Napoleon abandoned plans to invade England and turned to Austro-Russian forces, defeating them at Austerlitz later the same year. He gained much new territory, including annexation of Prussian lands, which ostensibly gave him control of Europe. The Holy Roman Empire was dissolved. Holland and Westphalia created, and over the next 5 years, Napoleon's relatives and loyalists were installed as leaders. Napoleon had a complicated love life, known today as one of the most controversial relationships in history. Napoleon was much in love with his wife for 13 years, Josephine. He found out that while away on missions, Josephine would cheat on him. In her prior marriage, Josephine had 2 children, which Napoleon loved very much as his own kids. Later in his life, he feared that he would not have an heir to succeed him, so in 1810, he had his childless marriage to Josephine divorced and married the daughter of the Austrian emperor in the hope of having an heir. A son, Napoleon II, was born a year later. The Peninsular War began in 1808. Costly French defeats over the next 5 years drained French military resources. Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812 resulted in disastrous retreat. The tide started to turn in favor of the Allies, and in March 1814, Paris fell. Napoleon went into exile on the Mediterranean island of Elba. In March 1815, he escaped and marched on the French capital, where he was renamed leader of the army. The Battle of Waterloo ended his brief second reign. The British imprisoned him on the remote Atlantic island of St. Helena, where he spent the rest of his days and later died on May 5th, 1821. Although much of the tragic and ironic ending to Napoleon's life, he is still looked at as one of the greatest military commanders the world has ever seen. His body was later transported to Esplanade in Invalides in a proper memorial tomb, fit for the great emperor he truly was.